Good morning, everybody. My name's Robert Devereux. I've been the Perm Sec at DWP since January. I think we're the only department that's brought Lego to Civil Service Live. And if you want to find out what that's all about, you've got to go somewhere else. But you're here now because we're going to just spend a session now talking about leadership. I'd just like to introduce Steve Radcliffe, who's been working with me now for about 6 months on my own leadership journey, and he's going to take us into the session.
Great stuff, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I am in the right place for the Doctor Who experience, aren't I? So for 20 years I've been a leadership coach. I've worked with all sorts of people of different shapes and sizes. I've had great pleasure of working with doctors and nurses and teachers and civil servants and people in boardrooms and people in warehouses and people in factories. Had an absolutely great time, but what actually have I been doing? Well, as a leadership coach, when I look back, what I've been doing is I've been spending my time helping people be more confident, have higher aspirations, be bolder at times, learn how to bring people with them, work out how they can make a bigger difference and bring people together to make an even bigger difference. So I've had a great 20 years doing that. I've had some major gripes along the way, and one of them is with the leadership industry, because I think it's spending too long making the topic too complicated. So when I wrote my book on leadership, because you've got to write a book on leadership, haven't you? I decided this would be the best thing about the book. Extremely slim. If you want to get good at anything, really, what does it involve? I think it would involve a few ideas up front, but actually a lot of practice, as opposed to you've got to understand lots of complicated ideas. I don't believe you need to do that. There are a few ideas in this book. The reason I mention it, it's actually called How to Make a Bigger Difference, and an audio copy of this is available to you free. And we'll tell you at the end of the session how you get hold of that. Now, this session, I have to tell you, comes with a health warning. Because if you get the wrong sort of leadership coach, you can end up a certain sort of leader. So we need to get this clear right up front. And I want you to watch a clip of Steve Ballmer, the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of Microsoft. And when he arrived at the similar event to the one that Robert's just arrived in, he walked on stage like this. You get the idea, you get the idea. Just for a second, imagine what would the civil service be like if all permanent secretaries were like that? In fact, quite honestly, we don't know whether they are or not. Because who knows in those corridors, in the DWP and places like that, we don't know what you're like. Okay. This session is going to be pretty interactive, and I'm hoping that below the chairs of some of you there is a small voting pad. Could you see if you've got a voting pad under your chair, please? I'm hoping that perhaps 150 of the total in the room have a voting pad. Now, those of you who don't have one, you're going to be involved anyway. Okay, so we're going to be doing some voting, and we're going to be doing some voting in the leadership space in a minute, but we need a warmer-upper first, okay? So if I can have the next slide, please. Those of you with the voting pads, I would like you to vote 1 if you are a better than average driver, and vote 2 if you're a worse than average driver. So you've got 20 seconds to vote 1 or 2, and let's see what we've got. Responses, 189, 189. Oh, we've got lots in already. Okay, 5 more seconds and we'll close the scores. We're stuck on 190 at the top. Okay, let's see the scores. What have we got in the room? Oh, my word. We've got lots of above average drivers. Remarkable. I've done this in many places, in many countries. Do you think I've ever got a different story? No. But I want to know, where are the groups with the seriously less than average drivers? I don't know where they are. I did this once in France, by the way, and the question was, are you an above or average lover? You can probably imagine what the scores were. There was one chap who was below average, a small guy from Marseille, but anyway, we won't go into that just for now. Okay, we're now going to do some voting on leaders. And if you've not got a voting pad, I'd like you to be influencing the person near to you who has the voting pad, okay? So for 2 minutes, influence, please, the person who's got the voting pad who's near you, because I will want to vote in a moment for who is the most effective leader. Spend 2 minutes influencing that voter. Who are you going to vote for? Spend 2 minutes, go.
Let's go.
Okay, get ready to vote. We are now voting. For the next 20 seconds, get your votes in. Who is the most effective leader? Let's have a look. Get your votes in. Crikey, you guys are quick. We had a session like this yesterday. They were really slow. You guys are hot on the button.
200.
5 more seconds. Okay, and let's please reveal the results. So, today's winner in green is number 4, Alex Ferguson. In second place with 29 votes, that looks like Obama, followed by the Queen, and last of all, Lady Gaga. So Obama beats Lady Gaga in the charts. This is probably the only place he ever will. So we've got Ferguson from the first round. Now, in a moment, I'm going to be asking you, we're going to do another round of this, and I'm going to be asking you to call out. We've got some ladies with mics who will come in later for the Q&A, but in a short while I'm going to be asking you, who did you vote for, and what is the one ingredient of leadership that had you vote for them? Okay, that's where we're going to go next. After another round of voting, here are the next 4. Dalai Lama, Mr. Geldof, Mrs. Thatcher, Winston Churchill. Get chatting around your voting pad. Get clear on who you're going to vote for. Spend a minute doing that. Okay, we're going to go to the voting. Press your buttons, please. Okay, great stuff. Let's have a look at the results. Out of these 4, 67% Winston Churchill wins by a long way. Second, Margaret Thatcher with 15, Dalai Lama 10, Bob Geldof 9. Very interesting. Now, I'm going to try and perform a high wire act here, because somebody over from this side, please call out who you voted for on that one-word ingredient of leadership. Somebody call it out, please. Okay, we'll go to a loud section. So you guys over here, so who did you vote for on Churchill and why? Courage. Here's the high wire act. Cool, it actually works. Okay, I want to fill this chart, so let's start anyway. Who did you vote for and what was the ingredient? Shout them out.
Ferguson, success.
Success, thank you.
Results.
Results. Rhetoric, very nice.
Lady Gaga,
Innovation, yeah. Yeah, good, keep them coming. Role model, who's that? Yeah, good. Who else? Charisma, yeah.
Dalai Lama,
Calm, very important. Do you have lots of it? Good man. Couple more. Churchill inspires, and over here? Tenacity, very good, very good. Okay, and Robert, who would you be voting for and why?
Churchill, hope.
Hope. Okay. And I'll tell you my vote. My vote would be for Geldof. And the reason being that there was a guy with no hierarchical power, no position, no title, no big desk, no company car, none of all that, but he got in touch with something he cared about and he started doing something about it. And I thought that was a great example of, doesn't matter where we are in life, if we get into that special spot of being in touch with what we care about, we can make great stuff happen. And Geldof for me was a great example. But interestingly, this talk of these guys is actually not the point. Because I'm now going to title this chart. And the title I'm going to put on this chart is, this is you. This is us. Because everything I've learned working with the warehouse people and the nurses and the civil servants and the people in offices and so on is that there is an old story about leadership and it's really getting in the way. Because the old story is about leaders are senior people. Leaders are experienced. Leaders are somehow potentially special. They may even have been explorers. And they're somehow different to us. And that story has had far too much mileage, and one of the biggest barriers I have come across consistently in 20 years of working with people and helping them be more powerful and effective in their lives is this something about, oh, well, that's not me. Whereas actually, for me, we could have kept on going with all sorts of ingredients on there, and I know that the ingredients are already here. I said there might only be a few ideas we need in this leadership space, and then quite a bit of practice. That's one of the ideas I'd ask you to think about taking away from today, which is that this old story of leadership keeps on getting in the way and maybe holding you back from believing you can make a bigger difference and then moving on to it. Robert, I know you've been running civil service awards for a few years, and I know you'll have come across all sorts of people who've made a bigger difference. Do you want to mention one or two, or what you've seen along the way?
Sure, I don't know if we're going to have a slide of Amy.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to, I think, all the Civil Service Award events. Here are just a couple. Amy here, who ran the Brixton Prison and completely turned it round. It's a place where people were actually doing a lot of harm to themselves, lots of drugs, lots of staff sickness as well, but completely turned it around, picking up some of the results points that people have scored out. Amir up there, sort of transforming people's perceptions of disability. One of the sentences that he's got on the award site is about how if you start to interact with people, they'll interact back with you. You're just actually going out and engaging with people and hearing about it. These are just two which I saw win awards in different places. The thing that strikes me a lot about the awards ceremony when I go there is how often I find there are teams from my own department, teams I have not myself met, who have actually been in, won awards, and actually are doing just fantastic things. The one I saw when I was at Buckingham Palace, that was a team of people doing rail accident investigation, right? That's a small subject, really rather important in the Department for Transport, but they'd actually been up to something together, they'd sorted something out, and it simply won a prize. It was absolutely brilliant.
Great stuff. I looked through the awards in preparation for all of this, just to look out for people who'd been just anywhere in the civil service up to something and making something happen. And I came across a really interesting video clip I want to show you now, because it features a lady called Laurie Chilton. And the interesting thing about the clip is that she doesn't say anything, but it's the people around her who talk about her. Interesting point just on the slide, by the way. When she won this award, I was told she refused to go on stage unless all her team were going on stage as well, which tells us something a little bit about Laurie. But when you listen to the video clip, I'd really like you to listen again to what are the ingredients her team are saying she brings to work, she brings to them. And just be noticing how many you can be saying, yeah, I do that, or I could do that, or yes, I am that way. So it's about Laurie, but also be thinking about yourself. Let's have a look at the video.
I would describe Laurie as someone with a lot of energy, and also somebody who provides an enormous amount of personal support.
Yeah, she's motivational, she's inspiring, she's caring.
She leads from the front, she's completely straight with you, you know where you stand with her, and she's a trailblazer, she makes a real difference.
Laurie has an open door policy for everybody.
You know that she's there and will always point you in the right direction.
She does listen to us, she gives you opportunities and enables us to work together to really achieve great things.
I know that if there are any issues that I'm concerned about, however busy she is, I know that I will have the opportunity to discuss it through with her.
When Laurie merged a number of teams from different cultures, different groups, different organised parts of the organisation, and it could have been awful, but she did it with huge care and attention to detail.
Laurie's created a group with a very clear direction, goal, function, and it makes you proud to work for the group because you feel like you're making a difference.
I'd like to thank Laurie for the inspiration that she gives to me and enabling me to be part of a team that I am truly proud of.
Laurie's really inspired me. She's given me the confidence to do things that perhaps I thought I never would do.
This year, Laurie also had a reoccurrence of cancer. And I think one of the most inspirational things about her was the way that she still put the team first, and she still thought about what we needed and what the whole group needed, even though she was going through all of that herself. She is quite amazing.
So a special lady, but I have to tell you on my travels, I've met hundreds, I've met thousands of people like Laurie, who bring all sorts of human qualities to work that are appreciated. And I'm sure you can look at this chart and see all sorts of phrases that you can apply to you. Interestingly, when I was preparing for this session, I looked at the slide and I thought, I'll bet there's a few who are going to turn up and go, yeah, I can picture straight talking, I can picture listening, but I'm not so sure about this am I inspiring bit. So I want to pull that out and perhaps introduce another different take on this leadership stuff, which is that what I've noticed about leaders I've sat across who I just know, or the evidence says, are effective leaders, there's something about them which is not about first inspiring others. The first step is they have inspired themselves. They've got in touch with something that matters to them, that they care about, and it gives them energy. For the Latin students in present, I don't know if you're a bit of a Latin buff. Okay, well, the word inspire derives from the Latin word spiro, which is to breathe life into something. So consider when you're inspiring yourself, you are breathing life into yourself. And only then, the second bit then, is potentially engaging and inspiring others. That would be my second big thought on this leadership stuff. Are you thinking about getting in touch with what you care about and inspiring yourself? I have a phrase for this, by the way, for those of you who follow up and perhaps listen to the book and so on, is that my phrase is that every leader I've worked with, the one defining quality, got nothing to do with personality type, nothing to do with age, title, sex, Myers-Briggs and all that sort of jazz. It is that every one of them has been up to something. Up to something in terms of a goal, a vision, a dream, an ambition. Something in the future they want to make happen. Okay? Now, I can't instantly show you pictures of somebody who is up to something, but we might have found some video of somebody who is absolutely not up to something. Let's have a look at Keith.
Under strengths, you've just put accounts.
Yeah.
That's your job, though. That's just. No, Keith. I was sort of looking for your skills within your job. So, is there anything else you could have put there? No. Okay. Under weaknesses, you've put eczema. Right, you've left this section completely blank, Keith. You haven't done the Q&A.
I thought that you filled that in.
No. This is aimed at you. Look, to what extent do you believe that you have the skills and knowledge to perform your job effectively? And then you just tick one of the boxes. Not at all. To some extent. Very much so. Don't know. What would you tick?
Don't know.
Okay. Question 2. Do you feel you have received adequate training to use your computer effectively?
What are the options?
Same as they're always the same. Always the same.
You get
not
the
at all.
idea.
To some extent.
Somebody absolutely not up to something. So if you can take that and go way down the other end of the scale when you're thinking about yourself and what it might look like being up to something. You've come across lots of people up to something, perhaps most recently in DWP on your travels and so on. What have you seen out there?
Well, most people know that I go out pretty much every Friday. I'm travelling around DWP because you have so many offices and so many staff to go and see. If I just tell you about 3 people, 2 of them got the same name, which makes it easy to do the story. I went to see Jane, who runs the contact centre in Grimsby. You've only got to meet Jane and walk into the office to see somebody who's actually up to something. You can see the energy in her, you can see what she brings to her team, and you just walk around the place is different from other places I've visited. If I take you to another leader running the Disability Centre in Birmingham, again called Jane, that's very convenient for me, she's been introducing Lean into the Birmingham Disability Centre. That involves, sort of, in some places, sort of meeting regularly to look at daily performance. I've seen lots of people do this in different places. Where you see it done really well, you can see people wanting to be part of that conversation, wanting to contribute ideas, and that's the consequence of a leader that's up to something and is creating that atmosphere. But it's not even just people leading entire units. In those 2 cases, let me tell you about Jamie, who I met in Warrington, who runs one of the bereavement service areas. Reasonably junior manager, but as soon as you talk to him, what you're getting is excitement. He's just got a new product. He's taken over some work from another part of the organisation because we've been migrated it. He really wants to make a success of it. And each one of those 3 people is within seconds. Within seconds, you can tell you're talking to somebody who's up to something. And it's just a fabulous privilege to go around and find people who've got that much energy and that much commitment to the work.
Great stuff, great stuff. Have a think through your video archives, because if you're sitting there thinking, well, again, they are different people to me, I promise you, because I've had these conversations I don't know how many times, you will find in your video archives moments in your life you have been up to something. Situations in your life, either at home or work, where you've been up to something. You've got a picture of something in the future you want. You're bringing energy, crucial aspect of all this. You're bringing energy, some determination, some resolve to make something happen. We're not talking about other leaders, we're talking about us together. So this whole idea of being up to something, I offer as a second idea to take away and play, but I want to introduce the third and perhaps final one now, which is that in railing against this leadership industry, who makes this stuff so complicated, when I decided to write the book, I'm thinking, I'm going to keep this really simple and as slim as I possibly can. And you know what? I looked around my office, 200 plus books on leadership that I've been reading over the many, many years. And it dawned on me, blimey, I have been seduced into thinking what they wanted me to think, which is, this is complicated. And I was always buying the next book, believing, the answer will be in the next one. And it's like, no, stop, Steve. What is your take on this? And actually, when I stood back, I realized that everything I'd ever read and every idea you've ever heard of in leadership falls under 3 headings. So my simple approach to this stuff, which I will use with Robert or I'll use with anybody anywhere, is actually leadership only involves 3 bits. Here they are. The first one is, and I think I need a new page. Oh, good Lord, we're getting good at this. Okay, when you are up to something, your thinking is always starting in the future. It might be you want to organise your child's birthday party, or a weekend away, or this year's holiday, or a project at work, or something you'd love your team to pull off, or you pull off. Your thinking starts in the future. You are not limited by what have we got in the present or what's happened in the past. When you're really at your best up to something, past and present fade away. You just get focused on something in the future. That is a leadership muscle to build. Be great at imagining how you'd like things to be different to what you've got. Now, second step in all this leadership stuff is when you've got a picture of where you want to be, the second bit is that you've got to go out and engage people to come with you. And engage for me, and it blows my mind that I've been banging on about this idea for years and years and years, but I still keep coming across people in leadership positions who think it's sufficient to communicate at people and present to them and tell them rather than engage. A lot of the old story of leadership is this engage or communicate stuff is one way. Engage is a two-way interaction. It involves making a connection in terms of one person with another. Maybe, just like in this video, maybe.
Mein Sektor. Das hier ist das wichtigste Gerät des Küstenwächters. Das Gerät und das Gerät. Überlebensradar.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
Deep human connection on exactly the same wavelength, almost telepathic. I really hope this doesn't remind you of some of your interactions at work. I hope it doesn't trigger thoughts of, oh, I had a conversation like that the other day. It felt a bit like that. Engage is 1,000,000 miles away from there. Something about connection and relationship in engagement. I'm really pleased, by the way, that there's increasing press and coverage about engage and engagement and so on, because I take it as a marker of the new story. But the new story is, crikey, we can have leaders all over the place. We can have people bringing much more of their best and making a bigger difference. Why aren't we who are running these organizations working out how to engage that from our people? So I'm really pleased that there's more being said about engage. But just having a sense of future of where you want to get to and engaging people, nothing's happened yet. The last bit of all this leadership stuff is you've got to make sure something is delivered. Sometimes you've got to deliver it yourself. Even better, as you build your leadership muscles and you do your engaging of others, you actually guide and steer and coach and support others to deliver for you. I worked with Gus O'Donnell for many years on this model, and I think it was a prompt for him towards creating, he came up with 4 Ps a few years ago. And to me, like everything that I come across in the leadership space, they all fit inside of Future, Engage, Deliver. Future is about getting in touch with your passion, what you care about, and your pride. What's that future that would have me be proud here at work? What does Engage do? It adds the pace that you need. Working with engaged people, you can make stuff happen really quickly. Working with people who aren't engaged, boy, can it be slow. And finally, how are we going to deliver? With professionalism. So the 4 Ps fit very nicely in terms of Future, Engage, Deliver. Now, this man had never heard of Future, Engage, Deliver till we met in about December, but we've been using it for a while. What's your take on leadership, keeping it simple, etc.?
The very good thing about this is how slim the volume is. All right, so the number of leadership books I've read is precisely 2, and yours is the second. I'm not going to read any more after this now. So what's my take on it? I mean, maybe I can just jump into the world I'm in now in work and pensions. So if you just think about what we're trying to achieve, it's an extraordinary thing to be able to get across to people quite how much we may be able to change in the space of the next 5 or 6 years, given the thing we're doing. Getting that future story out to everybody to make sure they can see what it is and how powerful it is terribly, terribly important. Some of you know I spent 2 years working for Guinness on secondment. Very, very good for learning how to pour Guinness. Very, very good for big company car. Very, very not good for thinking actually it's worth getting out of bed for. Selling a bit more Guinness, I can't really do that. Actually getting out of bed to transform the lives of millions of the most vulnerable people in society, extraordinarily powerful idea. That sort of thing, trying to make sure everybody understands that, really important to me. But then I think about the organisation I've got. We have a staff engagement score in DWP of 46%. Right? 46. Anything starting with a 4 is wrong. Right? That's how bad it is. And when you go around and talk to people, what I'm actually picking up is, here they are working in all these centres, the Jamie I've told you about, having perfectly good and plentiful ideas about their own little area, but actually not particularly feeling that the organisation, the department as a whole, the thing that's trying to create this future, is actually listening and responding to those ideas. So if I'm thinking about the word engage, I'm not thinking about it in some sort of techie staff survey sort of way. I'm actually thinking, have I invited you to think about how we can make this future better? Have I heard what you've told me maybe we could do something about? Have I taken action to help you do that? I've been encouraging everybody in the corporate centre of my department to think about getting out of bed to make their colleagues on the front line more successful. It's a slightly different way of thinking about life, not just can I make ministers more successful, which is really important too, but actually what am I doing to make that front line more successful? That is absolutely critical in the engaged space. And why is that important to me? Because actually the amount that we have now got to deliver in the next 5 years is staggering. I don't think there has been anything like this extent of welfare reform probably for a generation or two. There's no way, even for a department that's got a fabulous track record of delivery, that I'm going to feel confident about just getting people to roll their sleeves up and do it, unless I've got those engaged staff. Unless those engaged staff can see there is a really substantial future that really matters to the country. Now put all that together, and you can see what I thought as soon as I came across Steve. I mean, here is a way of thinking about life that really operates. Now, it's one thing for me to get it. I've been sitting talking to Steve now for the best part of 6 months. We've been working with my top team with Steve. Okay, so we're up to 8 people now. Only another 100,000 to go. Now, in that space, and this is the critical bit, we've really got to make sure that people get this leadership story, because it is not simply about me. It's not simply about my top team. It's about the conditions I create that ensures that all the way through the organisation, in my organisation, in all the other organisations represented here, that each of you think you have got some space in which you can be leaders, that you are personally up to something. And you can see why, I hope, this sort of resonates with the particular journeys that most of us are on now. Fabulous amounts of reform going on, but actually it's all going to depend on creating the conditions in which we can make sure each of you are real leaders.
Great stuff, great stuff. So in a second, we're going to throw it open for Q&A, and there are people with mics. So let me just summarise where we've got to so far in a few ideas this morning. First one is, if you walked into this room not seeing yourself as a leader, and I know that's a word which can get in the way, chuck that belief out the window. In fact, even drop the word if you like, but think about yourself in terms of, is there a difference I can make bigger than the one I'm even making now? Are there things I want to create in the future and make happen? Right, if I just sort of drop some of these beliefs we have about ourselves, my favourite one for me is, well, I'm just a lad from Wigan. What the hell am I doing on this stage in the first place? And I can be held back from that. Well, notice it and move on and get on with what you want to get on with. Secondly, the core of making a difference in life, I think, is be up to something. Find something that matters to you that you're going to be up to. And in terms of a little framework to help you think through, yeah, that's all fine, but how do I do it? It's as simple as get in touch with that future, make sure it gives you energy, it inspires you. Get out there and engage people, and by the way, get feedback from people as to whether you are engaging and how you can be more engaging. And then thirdly, make sure stuff is delivered rather than left in the ether. Let's move into Q&A. I'll kick us off. What's your reflection now, Robert, in terms of your journey and this leadership stuff? And when did you start thinking about it? When did you get into it? And would you like something different for the people here today?
That's not a leading question. Okay, so I mean, honest truth, you know, I've managed to have 33 years in the civil service without spending, if I'm honest, a lot of time thinking about leadership through most of that. Consistently, people have been valuing me for what I can do functionally. You know, I've got a maths background, I'm a policy person, you know, I can do policy, fantastic. It's only at the point at which you suddenly are confronted with very substantial leadership responsibilities, you suddenly realise actually that's not going to get you home. And I think it's a disappointment, if I'm honest, that there's a whole generation of people who've grown up and sort of you arrive at worrying about leadership at the point at which you're sitting at the top of an organisation. So the good news, actually, about the stuff that Steve's been talking about is it is very accessible. You can do something about it. You do not need to have spent 30 years reading all the books in his library. You can actually get the ideas quite quickly. But you know, what I want for the future, and actually, and this is something which Gus and I and the other perm secs are really, really keen to make sure we're establishing for the generations in the room here, that actually we are all getting much, much sharper about making sure we're talking about leadership, doing something about it, valuing it all the way through, and not leaving this as some sort of sideline that, well, maybe you could do a bit of leadership as well. This is so critical to the future for the civil service that this is the thing that we're putting all our energy in.
Great, great. So let's have some questions. As I said, we've got mics. There's a lady there. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Christine. I wanted to know how you thought about the balance between empowerment and taking personal responsibility in the civil service today. I'm inspired by the term engagement, but I just wondered how empowerment and taking personal responsibility fits with that.
Shall I start?
Yeah.
Well, let me just tell you a story then. I went up to Annie's Land in Glasgow in my first week because we've been trialling in some parts of Job Centre Plus an arrangement where basically we're allowing people to sort of slightly bend the normal operating practices to use their skill and judgment, of which they've got lots, essentially empowering them to work and do different things. Let's be clear, I am an accounting officer responsible for billions of pounds. I need to sleep at night, so I'm not sort of in the wildly, in the sort of just do anything you like market. But actually what they've done up in Annie's Land is to put a reasonable sort of bound around space, which actually I'm really pleased that people can actually be empowered within. Actually, there are still some sets of rules there that I'd like them to participate in, but it's very clear quite quickly that even with a little bit of space, people are actually getting to better outcomes simply because we're trusting the managers to make good choices.
There's a phrase I came across in this space many years ago, and I'm happy to nick anybody's good ideas. And this guy said, I want the people in my organisation to be unbridled yet corralled. And that's a very vivid picture for me. Organisations have to have a corral. The corral is, we're in this sort of business, we're trying to achieve this sort of end result, we're going in this direction at this pace, and we've got this amount of money to do it with. Now, inside that corral, we want you unbridled. We want you bringing your best. We want you taking responsibility, feeling empowered, and so on. But remember, we're here for this purpose, with this strategy, to get to this goal. Inside that corral, be unbridled. Is there somebody behind? Oh, sorry. Yeah, we've got one down here when you're ready. Please. Down here at the front. Do we have a lady at the back? No, she was just scratching her nose. Okay. We've got a lady on the front row. Thank you.
Hi, Robert. I was just going to ask about training because in regards to the training that we currently have is just e-learning. So is there any way that facilitated training can be brought back? Because I think that's one way of getting staff engaged rather than just doing e-learning.
Do you mean e-learning around leadership or just e-learning generally?
In training, just training, because obviously at the moment all our training is e-learning, which it's very hard to fit in during the day sometimes.
Okay. Well, I mean, there are some good reasons why we've gone to the trouble of putting quite a lot of stuff available e-learning, because actually you can, people can access it at times that they don't necessarily be able to access it as traditional classroom stuff. I understand what you mean, though. There are some things that are better done and better delivered in a sort of face-to-face way. I mean, I've spent, for example, quite a bit of time talking to policy colleagues who are right across Whitehall, literally face-to-face, because some of the things I want to communicate are to be said within four walls, because they're easier to get your head around that way. So if you think that the balance is wrong, let me have a reflection on that.
We've got a quick, yeah, here we go, gentleman in a white shirt. Oh no, the lady at the back there, please. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jayshree from HMRC. I want to know from Steve, how would you lead someone who's not up to something?
How do you lead someone who's not up to something? Yeah, unfortunately, far too common a situation. I would say there are two routes to take. One is command and control on the way to beating the living daylights out of them. Okay, that's the old story. The new one is, interestingly, if you want to engage me, and this is a difference between the old story and the new story. So say you've got, I'm working for you, okay? In the old days, your preparation for an interaction with me would be you getting excited about possibilities for the future and you getting clear on how to articulate them. And then you'd come and tell me. And I would watch you being excited about this future you want. If you are to engage me, where do you also want possibilities for the future to be alive? Answer, over here. So this changes the game a little bit for leaders. It's not just a case of, I'll get my act together and transmit and assume people will follow. It actually involves spending a bit of time on what could we create together that both of us feel good about. That is a different sort of conversation. So the engage route is, don't just go out excited about your future. A powerful ingredient of engaging people is help them be excited about a future they want as well. Lots of leaders don't get that and don't make that shift. Thank you. Down here.
Yes, I apologise for going slightly off the mark, but this does deal with leadership and engagement. It's just that the lady asked about training. I'm actually from PDCS Learning Design. We've been through 2 selection exercises already in the past 4 years, and we're worried now we're going to be yet another selection exercise. So I'm not sure how lean we can actually get, but we're very concerned how, when you're cutting training design and delivery, can you go back to a facilitated level of training? It's going to be more and more e-learning, but that's what we're concerned about. I'm not saying it will be, it's just a concern, a perception.
Okay, well, I understand the concern. So, I mean, what we're doing in Department for Conventions is quite similar to what's going on elsewhere. I mean, the government has made some choices about the resources available for departments. What I'm trying to do at the moment is make sure we have a department that actually works within those resources. Now, that's why we're going through a set of selection exercises, because I positively want to be positively choosing the best people to stay in the organisation. I mean, why wouldn't I do that? In terms of the way in which we then organise the department, I mean, when I said to the lady down here that, you know, I believe in doing learning and development well, I mean, I do. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time trying to do that with myself. So I don't know, we haven't got anywhere near as far as actually finishing off the design at the level all the way down, including where learning and development is, so we don't know where we're going to be in the end for that. But, you know, in terms of, is it a priority for me to make sure that we're equipping people to go on the journey that we're trying to go on? Well, it must be. So I think the best thing to do is to watch this space and give me an email if you think I'll be in the wrong space.
Thank you very much. Gentleman here.
Yeah, I'm Toby. I'm from DWP as well.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah, my question is, how do you ensure that you've got the leaders, the correct leadership skills in the right places? I mean, the reason I ask is I had a customer complaint the other day. I picked the phone up to one of my colleagues in a benefit centre, and the first reaction was, "Why are you phoning me?" And I had to explain to her that she actually dealt with that area that I was trying to deal with. But when you get that kind of reaction from a leader, in theory, how do we ensure we've got the right people in the right places?
Okay, well, let us make a distinction here between, I mean, the story we've been telling you today is trying to get people's heads round why this stuff is important and how we might get there. I mean, it would be absolutely foolish on my part to say the organisation that you and I are both in is absolutely word perfect on all this right now. Clearly not. The corresponding thing that goes with the story about leadership is actually, well, what am I doing? What are other managers doing to actually make sure people do get this? And actually, we're assessing their performance with one eye on that leadership thing. Let me tell you a story from the department I used to be in. Just in respect to senior civil servants, there's a sort of a straightforward performance assessment at the end of the year, as you're aware. I mean, pretty typically, people were getting into the top box because they delivered. Okay, so delivery, that's quite an important thing. Actually, you could tell that some people were delivering, as it were, and ruining their teams in the process, and some were delivering and their teams were really engaged with it. So we started to say, I tell you what, you can't be in the top box unless you're also top on leadership. Top on leadership, separately assessed from how you delivered all this stuff. It sent quite an interesting sort of set of waves through the organisation, because some people who were relentlessly in the top box previously found themselves in box 2 and 3. And that message started to mean, actually, well, I better pay some attention to all this stuff, because if I do want to be in this space, I better learn how to do it, I better pay attention to it. And that's the sort of journey that we're going to be going on now, that actually it's one thing to set out my stall and say, that is the way I want to run the department. I've then got to make sure people engage with it. I mean, that's partly what the performance management system is there to do. We have to go on that journey now.
Thank you. Gentleman over here.
Hello. Tristan here from the Cabinet Office. I wondered what part failure plays in leadership.
I can start the batting there. I immediately, when you say that word, I immediately think of my skiing holidays. And on the first morning, I can remember this vividly, my ambition was not to fall over. By the time I was into the second day and the third day, I realised that if I wasn't falling over, failing, I wasn't actually learning as fast as I could. So part of growing and being up to something is guaranteed, rock solid, there will be things which won't work. They won't work, you'll have disappointments, upsets, setbacks, things will fall apart, people will let you down, and so on and so on and so on. The really interesting thing for me to notice when working with people is not what happens around them, but how do they respond to it. And sometimes at a moment we call failure, some people's energy goes down and can stay down. Some, it goes down but then moves forward. And this actually is the word, we're in the territory here of resilience. And one way of looking at resilience is actually how do we respond to what happens around us, and to what extent do we get taken out, or can we regather ourselves and move on? Well, failure is going to happen. The question is, how do we respond to it?
Can I just come in on this? I mean, that's a response in respect to the individual. I mean, let me tell you one thing which I'm being offered at the moment, and I can't quite decide whether to accept. Terry Moran, who I've asked to be Chief Operating Officer at DWP, in creating the new organisation, is saying to me he wants to run a set of awards, obviously, and he wants to know whether I'd be up for best failure. All right. Now you can see why, you know, a permanent secretary might just sort of pause over that particular award. But the point he's trying to make is actually he wants to be able to say to somebody that was a really seriously good attempt at something. It was risky. Yes, it failed, but actually we've learned from it, and let's be pleased about it. Instead of thinking that the word failure means you have somehow not done what I want to do. Yeah. So if actually find within 6 months we have a best failure award in DWP, please don't think we're taking the piss. But actually, it will be deliberately to try to encourage behaviours that go with what Steve just said.
That's excellent. I've not heard of that. That's great. Up at the back, please.
Yes, hello, good morning. Hi, Steve. I have a question for you.
A bit louder, please.
Okay, perhaps I should go a bit closer to the microphone. Yeah. Thank you. Steve, I have a question for you, if I may. I was just wondering how you might have to handle a person who is up to something but is operating just outside their corral. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and this is why I like this phrase, unbridled yet corralled. A lot of getting organisations to work is you've got to be managing a couple of things at the same time. And one of them is, what are we here for? And the second is, how can we liberate people, empower them, help them take responsibility and so on. One of the things, I use this little lens when I'm walking around organisations and places, and I look for how clear is the corral here? How clearly has it been stated? And secondly also, to what extent are people being unbridled here? Very often I find the corral is often not made clear. It's sort of vaguish, in which case people can wander wherever. But even worse, and this is something I have a passion to try and change, most leaders actually spend more time on getting the strategic thinking, the plan and so on right in the corral, and actually don't spend enough time doing the unbridling bit. But my shorthand answer is, be clearer about the corral. You don't want the horses running everywhere.
I met a manager, I better not say where actually, but somewhere in the country, who I was actually really pleased to hear was basically trying to push the boundary of where the corral is. I mean, I'm up for sort of unbridled but corralled, but actually, you know, we can fall into the trap of just sort of assuming that everybody knows what this corral is. And actually, she had taken a step, which I think could have been conceived as being outside the corral, but actually, it was probably okay. So actually, I'd rather have people sort of at least pushing the boundary and trying. Come and talk to me. You know, let's see whether or not we got this in the right space. Let's not just assume we've all got exactly the right idea. I mean, I want it to be corral, but I mean, I'm prepared to have a conversation. Just talk to me.
Great, great stuff. We've got somebody in the cheap seats right at the back there.
Hello, my name's Laura. I'm in the DWP. I wondered, is there any motivation to become a leader or to be a good leader with our performance system being such that nobody can get a wholly exceptional, everybody's a majority marking now?
Yeah. Okay, so one of the surprises for me coming into the department is to find that that is the performance regime. So for those who don't know, certainly for below the SES, we have a performance regime that basically scores about 90% as people with a badge called consistently good. And quite a lot of the consistently good think that that's not the right answer. Can I say that I'm thinking about whether that actually really works for us, and trying to make sure that it actually is going to be sending the right signals. Be very clear, the reason the department got into that is because people didn't like the previous regime. So, you know, it's sort of, you're hung if you do and hung if you don't. But it's certainly on my agenda of things to check whether or not at the levels, particularly in which I'm looking for leadership in the organisation, right down the organisation, I want to make sure that actually those signals are coming through properly. It comes back to the point that the gentleman earlier said about, you know, how do I make sure that leadership happens? Well, I need something that actually is giving people proper signals about it as well. Can I just say it's work in progress?
And our final question, because we want to make sure we keep on time, is a lady in the back there.
Hi, my name's Diane from HMRC. I'm just wondering, you're talking about leaders, you know, engaging staff. What about staff engaging staff? And what's the best way to go about engaging people who are really set in their ways and don't want to change?
Yeah. Well, people set in their ways. It's interesting. The gentleman here said he went through to this centre and he got the reply, you know, why are you phoning me? We can look at that through the lens of the wrong person is in the job. Actually, my mind instantly went to, that person sounds like one of the 54 that Robert's got. Remember he said he had a score of 46? It's like, well, I wonder what frame of mind the other 54 are rolling up in. Interestingly, it could be exactly the right person. You could know exactly the right people, but they haven't been engaged. They haven't been engaged because nobody's arrived with a sense of a story of the future. Nobody's done a bit of Churchill and brought a bit of hope and optimism and about what we're building together. So I'm actually pretty slow in moving to, we've got the wrong people. The first thing I look at is, have people been engaged around here? Is there a future story which might start bringing the best from them? So my betting is there might be something missing there. We need to finish now so you can get off to your next coffee and your next session and so on and so on. Final word from me before a final word from Robert. If we can pop to this slide. So as part of the difference I'm trying to make, I'm making an audio version of the book, How to Make a Bigger Difference. I'm making it available to everybody in the civil service. So this is the website address to go to find out how you can download the book. But don't just keep it to yourself, just tell anybody else there is a book that might be worth reading. And by the way, quick plug here, we're not talking about a rubbish book here. If you go on Amazon, quick plug, if you go on Amazon and punch in leadership, you will be offered 175,000 books. This is the #1. Thank you very much. So go to Bigger Difference, download your book. Thank you for your involvement today. Robert.
Okay, good. Thank you all very much for joining us. I hope you found that a stimulating session. The key messages we're trying to get across, do think about yourself as leaders, okay? That's the only way in which the civil service is going to be able to deliver all the things we have to do. This stuff is very accessible. I hope you found this session useful. Do get hold of the book and think about it a bit more. But I'd just like to stop by thanking Steve for doing this and ask you to join me in thanking him for joining us.